Welcome to class again. This is the final class on our book. We'll have sort of a question and answer after this, but in terms of our study, this is the last final chapter of Rob Preece's book called Creative Transformation. So I just like to have a sort of few closing remarks, sort of a summation of this book. Again, you have to read the book from cover to cover. It's so wonderful. But just wanted to sort of keep this a little shorter, just as sort of some final thoughts on the book before we sort of have sharing on it here. So just for auspiciousness and for blessing, I'm just going to read the Heart Sutra here. Homage to perfection, wisdom, the Blessed Mother. Thus I have heard at one time the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajgriha and Mass of Vultures Mount together, a great assembly of monks and nuns and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. That time the Blessed One was absorbed in the concentration of countless aspects of phenomena called profound illumination. That time also Spirit of Alchemy, the Bodhisattva, the Great Being, was looking perfectly the profound perfection of wisdom, looking perfectly also the five aggregates being empty of inherent existence. Then through the power of Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Spirit of Alchemy, the Bodhisattva, the Great Being, how should a son of the lineage train who wishes to engage in the practice of profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and Spirit of Alchemy, the Bodhisattva, the Great Being, replied to Venerable Shariputra as follows. Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of the lineage wishes to engage the practice of profound perfection of wisdom should look perfectly like this. Subsequently, looking perfectly and correctly, also the five aggregates being empty of inherent existence. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is none other than form. Form is also none other than emptiness. Likewise, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, having no characteristics. They are not produced and do not cease. They have no defilement, no separation from defilement, they have no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, and no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mentality, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no tactile object, no phenomenon. There is no I element and so forth up to no mentality element, also up to no element of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance and so forth, up to no aging and death and no exhaustion of aging and death. Likewise, there is no suffering, origin, cessation, or path, no exalted awareness, no attainment, also no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide in the perfection of wisdom. Their minds have no obstructions and no fear, passing utterly beyond perversity to attain the final nirvana. Also, all Buddhas reside perfectly in the three times, having relied upon the perfection of wisdom, became manifest complete Buddhas in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the equal to the unequaled mantra, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, since it's not false, should be known as the truth. The mantra of perfection of wisdom is proclaimed, Tayatam Gata Gata Paragata Parasam Gati Puri Soha. Shariputra, Bodhisattva, Great Being, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like this. Then the Blessed One arose in that concentration and said to Spirit of the Bodhisattva, the Great Being, that he'd spoken well. Good, O son of the lineage, is like that, since it's like that just as you have revealed. In that way, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra, Spirit of the Bodhisattva, the Great Being, the entire circle of disciples, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, demigods, and spirits, were delighted, highly praised what had been spoken by the Blessed One. So we'll just take a moment just to have a brief sort of sitting meditation here from our hearts, taking refuge in the three jewels of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Again, just really setting this, again, refuge, faith or confidence in the three jewels. Buddha as the doctor, medicine of emptiness as the Dharma, and the Sangha, sort of community and staff helping the doctor. Really just, again, the medicine, in particular the Dharma jewel, wisdom realizing emptiness, in particular done with bodhicitta. So we fear suffering and don't want to suffer. We are sort of refugees in sort of place of conflict in the world. So we're going to a place for protection, what's safe, and what is that? It's the true medicine of the Dharma, or wisdom realizing emptiness. And again, setting our intention of bodhicitta. May everything we do at each moment, all actions of body, speech, and mind, be put for the awakening of all sentient beings, the enlightenment of all beings, beings become Buddha, that they lead all other beings to Buddha. Then just taking a moment just to our heart to visualize the center of ourselves, our root mind, our mind of clear light, represented by Conqueror Vajradhara. So he's about sort of the size of a dime at our hearts. Beautiful blue Buddha in lotus position, young and beautiful, wearing a crown. His legs are in lotus posture, Vajrasana. He has his arms crossed, holding a bell in his left hand and diamond scepter or Vajra in his right. Beautiful jewelry and silks and so forth. And again, this is our Buddha nature. Or Tathagata Garbha. We have natural Tathagata Garbha. In other words, our mind is always already empty, always already pure, always already perfect and unstained. And the developing, sort of, if that's the ultimate level of reality of ourselves, conventional level, is developing Tathagata Garbha. It's the whole process we have for revealing or disclosing that which is always already in us. All the sort of purification and karmic merit or virtue to realize emptiness, the emptiness of our minds. Again, like a beautiful piece of lapis or blue sapphire at our hearts, knowing that we always have Buddha nature. It's who we really are. At each moment. Okay, so just some final thoughts on the last chapter here, which is called Creative Transformation. So Rob Preece says that the central principle of Tantra is that energy of our instincts and emotions need not be repressed, but can be transformed. Once in proper context, it requires a channel of symbolic expression as a vehicle for its transformation. The key is to find a channel that truly holds interest and engages these energies and forces. As these forces become symbolically or metaphorically expressed, they are brought into a higher energy level of consciousness, and integration is facilitated through creative process. Creativity and activity in the broadest sense, not just artistic, can be ritual or physical activity, life as art. So this is the classic Jungian thing, that by working with symbolic expressions of sort of complexes that we have, or sort of psychoanalytic trouble or suffering that we're having, once we have a sort of a creative archetype or symbolic outlet, these energies, we can become individuated, sort of the repressed energies or parts of ourselves. The darkness can be brought unified with the light, and we can become sort of a whole individual and healed or made whole, right? But we need, as Jung would say, not just that we need this sort of channel of artistic or symbolic expression to bring these things into awareness and sort of become sort of a greater version of ourselves. But we also need to find the channel that holds our interest in energies and forces. So we need to find this sort of creative outlet in our lives to be able to do this. And again, Jung, of course, would say it's not just becoming an artist, like a painter or poet or writer or something, but you can sort of like being creative in a sort of broader sense, right? They can be through sort of daily spiritual rituals, even physical activities, sort of these, you could a lot of ways say kind of like these sort of holy rituals or symbolic activities we have in our day-to-day lives can be made special that way, and see them as being sort of creative or spiritual in and of themselves, a way of channeling these energies and making ourselves whole. So Rob Preece says that, of course, our contemporary world, as a Jungian therapist, he's saying this, has lost many of these natural ways energy can be transformed. And so the world has become shadowy and destructive, sick and perverse. These sort of energies have to be respected and channeled, and we need creative transformation on an individual and collective level, right? So, of course, this is the age-old thing Jung would say, not just him, but many sort of theorists and so forth would say that we've lost all these traditional ways of processing these energies or archetypal forces in our lives, and suffer because of that. People are very, very lost. And again, that energy, if you repress it, comes out in sort of destructive, shadowy, sick, and perverse ways. So many Jungian therapists and different, sort of spiritual teachers have talked about the necessity of sort of, if not connecting with traditional sort of rituals and sort of spiritual arts and so forth, developing new ones that we need to do, or modernize sort of ancient ones, right? And this is, of course, over the last 100 years, more and more people have seen sort of the wisdom of this and trying to do this. These would be discovering traditional, cultural, and spiritual traditions, right? So Georges Bataille is a famous French writer and philosopher I like very, very much. And he said, like, traditionally what we have, I don't want to get into Bataille's philosophy. If you want, you read his book called Erotism, which is a very, very famous, really, really amazing book. But he said the religious festival traditionally is what provides this space in which to enact or sort of, be made whole, or sort of, like, for him, it's this idea of, the human finding back sort of its natural place within sort of the natural flow of the universe, right? What he calls transgression or continuity, right? He's got a very short book called Theory of Religion, which is really, really amazing. So we have all these daily sacrificial acts where we sacrifice our own individual ego and sort of join sort of this flow of life, right? So traditionally, the idea of the festival would be, where cultures would do this. He would say we have this now. It's not like he's got a book because he's a big surrealist and friends with André Breton, everybody in France at the time in the 20s and 30s. But he wrote a book saying that, the myth of our modern era is that we have no myths. So in other words, we have all these sort of myths and symbolic gestures, and festivals are just not in a traditional way. Let's say you go to a hockey game and have this sort of collective experience of, or a soccer game, for instance. We still have a lot of these cultural sort of festivals or holidays where we do things together, right? So that's very, very true. But again, saying what Jung was saying, these things, for them to work effectively, we have to sort of see them more as an alchemical process, as a healing process for ourselves. Right? So what he says is that in a lot of ways, we need to bring Rob Preece saying sort of an older idea of having guides, a mentorship or apprenticeship models for these old spiritual sort of, whether they be traditional or created modern, or sort of I guess renewing them, making old traditions work today. We need a whole sort of mentorship or apprenticeship program for that to work. And this would be the idea of ceremonial work, right? Or mastering arts or mastering crafts. So this is the model of the Tantric tradition, right? And we must attract and absorb the energy we wish to transform. This gives its task, its vitality and interest. It concentrates our attention, focuses our motion and instincts. And when we find an inspirational channel, there's something magical and compulsive in the relationship to it. Overwhelming released energy. We've opened a channel, the source of our creative potential. So again, we all know what it's like. Like he says, this is sort of, it talks this idea that when you open this, there's sort of almost an experience of channeling, like a muse, a daemon, or sort of channeling the spirit world when we do this. And we need a discipline or a craft to do this. We need a sort of mastering of skills. It's a combination of commitment and willingness to engage in this process, to enter the vessel. And it becomes a process of refinement, and mastery can then begin. And this is whether you're an artist, a craftsperson, musician, writer, or athlete. There's a gradual mastery to know the flow of creative energy, right? And this is master of our creative vitality, discover the love and joy in this process, and we open ourselves to something divine with this. So basically, we do this anyway. Anytime you're sort of, we have sort of a craft or an art that we do, or a discipline. Again, whether we are a great gardener or a writer or a painter or an athlete, or we play games, we're like a really good skier or a golfer, even a scientist, like doing your own research. Again, you writing books, or let's say you're even doing arts and crafts for people, you know, at the fair, at the kids' day camp or something, help kids play games, doing this together, or games, like playing games together. You can think of, like, was original gangster, old Dungeons and Dragons person from the 1980s, and we get all our friends together as little kids and do these games together. We would learn the rules of these games, right? We would have people who would mentor us, show us how to do these things. We would practice this together and get better at it. And then with the discipline, we become masters of it, right? So this is the old guild model that you, like I always say, if in the old days in medieval Europe, that you're building your cathedral, we all get together as a collective enterprise. We have wealthy people putting the money down for that. Everyone's pitching in. And then you have all these guild societies that do the wrought iron, that do the stained glass windows, that are stonemasons, that are doing the wood carving and so forth, and erecting this beautiful artistic creation that ends up being enjoyed collectively, right? This, of course, can be done even if you're into sports, where we all get together and like play games together, then get good. There's, you know, like an audience, spectators, participants. It's this huge festival. You know, this was a big thing even symbolically in older cultures, where sports would be seen as a sacred puja or sacred ceremony. I know in Aztec and Mayan societies, they did that, where they would be enacting it would be like a divine play, acting sort of stories from the gods and goddesses in the way that people would play these games, right? I think it's really, really beautiful. So again, we need the creative outlet. We need to find something that we love doing to be able to do this, channel all these energies into it. We need to do it with discipline and refinement and mastery, right? So what happens when this is, you know, when you do something you love, you end up channeling, getting in the zone. You jog every day, you get in that zone, you know, you just feel like you're one with the universe. You are a writer, you are a painter, you are channeling things. You are creating, let's say you might even be an entrepreneur making new businesses. You feel that it's not just you. There's a whole creative process where, again, your muse or your daemon in the Greek sense is coming through you. You're sort of part of something bigger. So Joe Deleuze said that everything is an act of creation. And when you're creating on an individual level, you get out of the way where you feel that the creative force of the universe itself is working through you. So you call it counter-actualization, in the sense that your own individual process of creation, you almost back-engineer it to see how it's been not just you, but it's the whole universe working through you. It's the site of the universe's creation in your creation, right? It's like all painting is happening when I paint my watercolor, right? All painters are working through me when I'm painting. You know, it's just this, the universe itself is being created here on my canvas, right? Which is really, really beautiful. So we all feel this when we're doing creative things, right? But again, this is a whole like ceremonial work, a mastering of skills. And again, like Heidegger would say, art in the old Greek way, there's poesis and techne. In other words, poesis meaning bringing forth, and a techne sense that there's a craft or a sense of rules or mastery or skill that you're doing here, right? So again, and we need to do this with the paramita of joyful effort, which is one of the 6 paramitas that we use to express bodhicitta on our way to enlightenment. And we master creative vitality, discover the love, the joy in the process. So not only do we need to bring joy to the process, we discover joy and bliss in the process of doing this. So this becomes like we open to something divine in doing this. And this, in a lot of ways, can be seen itself as a creative art that is an act of devotion or bhakti yoga here. So Rob Preece says, we liberate the forces of the unconscious and lead them out of the dark and into the light of our creative life. The power and vitality are strengths rather than dominating us or being our weaknesses. So we see the effect of the process of transformation. We feel love, joy, and bliss and at the heart of ourselves. So in other words, this is what he would call a living alchemy, right? So this, in a lot of ways, as we start to see the divine through this process of creativity and joy, the divine within, right? This is our own Buddha nature that we're expressing. Again, that we're bringing into the world in something that's always already been there. So it's always been pure. Like this is, like I said, to dissolve the graduated path and the discovery model path by being creative and doing these arts and masteries and disciplines, creating the karma on a sort of individual level. You bring forth this purity and creativity and joy and love and bliss and luminosity that's always already been there from the beginning. There's been a path of discovery. You see just for the whole pilgrimage that basically everything you've always wanted has always been with you right from the start. Everything's always already been pure and sacred. So the creative transformation, the alchemical process, is Tantra itself. Tantra is a whole way of living this way. Your tantric practice, your Data yoga, your Guru yoga, all the sort of rituals you do are sort of ceremonial, magical work, arts of joy, arts of bliss, path of joy, path to bliss, right? And again, creative, luminous. It's sort of a creative gnosis that you're bringing into the world, a healing, making whole you're bringing into the world. That's a work of art. So that's Tantra. That's basically, and we talk about Tantra being, again, like, you know, this idea of thread, that you're creating, you're knitting something, a huge tapestry of life. And again, like Deleuze would say, who's creating what? You are being created in the process of creating. The universe is creating itself in and through you. You're manifesting the universe in and through you. The universe is manifesting you and doing it, right? So Tantra has this. And then the thread, of course, is the thread that brings you from samsara to nirvana. And what is that bridge? It is your mind, right? It is mind in the emptiness and the conventional reality of the arts is the tapestry that you're working with, the space in which to do all this manifestation, right? So this is the beautiful lesson of this book, to sort of show sort of the Jungian heart of Buddhist Tantra and the Buddhist Tantra at the heart of Jung's idea of spiritual alchemy and spiritual healing. So that's that. And I do wanted to say, again, we could do this as bottomless, but I like this idea if you wanted to bring it into your own life. Of course, you get a tantric empowerment, commentary, and then do the retreats, enter the mandala, and live your life that way. But a big hero of mine, of course, was William Morris in the arts and crafts movement in England at the turn of the 20th century, so coming out of the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood and sort of the Romantic period. My sort of love for guild socialism and British the British sort of spiritual anarchist tradition going back to the English Civil War with the dissenting churches, and of course my big hero William Blake, and of course Percy Shelley. In a lot of ways, what William Morris wanted is, can we make a revolution in society where we get people to become creative again? Can we get people to learn old ways of doing arts and crafts that most of all, not only they find that they can create and hence bring their own autonomy and freedom back into their lives, but most of all, so in other words, this is again, finding your freedom. If Tantra is just expressing the unity of emptiness and karma, or cause and effect dependent origination, that's the creativity, in the sense that anything's possible because things are empty, anything's possible because it can be created through karma, right? By doing Tantra, or even the arts and crafts movement, we're giving people's agency back to them, making people authors of their own lives, giving them the freedom and power to create themselves, to create the world they end up living in existentially. And so that was the sort of great message that William Morris, being interested in anarchism, no gods, no masters, is that you becoming the author, the actualizer of your own life. But also William Morris said it's most, and this is coming out of the Industrial Revolution, it's important to be a creator because you are creating joyous things. You are creating blissful things for yourselves and others. Most of all, you are creating beauty. And beauty is healing. Healing is beauty, right? That's the alchemy there, right? We are turning lead into gold for this. So I like that idea, the arts and crafts movement. And the world is far more violent, ignorant, and most of all, uglier now than it was when William Morris was doing his thing and writing and leading sort of that movement, the arts and crafts movement at the beginning of the 20th century. That might, of course, seem kind of naive and foolish, just like sort of a lot of the pacifist anarchist movements were seen as being sort of naive and foolish and childish. But again, I will put my money on that and again be sort of the Nietzschean final stage after I've gone from being the camel, of being sort of weighted down with all my negativities and sufferings and so forth. I become the laughing lion of alchemically transforming everything, but the end product is being the loving, innocent child, the beautiful child at the end of it that loves and affirms absolutely everything. And so this process of sort of creativity and joyous creation and spiritual alchemy might, through Tantra, might seem a little childish and naive to some, but I would argue it's precisely that space that ends up, you could say, saving everything, saving ourselves. So that was Kenneth Rexroth, one of my favorite beat poets and great Shingon Buddhist, always said that Buddhism can't change the world, but it can save it. It can't change the world, but it can save it. And so I think that that's what we mean by that. Okay, so let's dedicate all of this for the enlightenment and awakening of all sentient beings, in particular for really expressing, manifesting, and sharing our bodhicitta, which is the true flaming beating heart of Buddhism, and may that pervade all spaces and all beings. Okay, see you next time.